This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we are fortunate to have a distinguished guest, Dr. Narendra Jadhav, who's a policymaker, economist, educationist, and best-selling author, and a member of our Indian Parliament. Thank you very much, Dr. Jadhav, for coming to our show. Welcome to our show, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do to make a difference. And thank you for serving India and the world. You have a very distinguished career, Dr. Jadhav. Please tell us briefly about your present public role for our global audience.
Uh, Presently, I'm a member of the Indian Parliament, and I'm a member of the upper house of the Parliament. So, in American parlance, it would mean that I'm a senator in the Indian Parliament, and I'm a nominated one. The President of India has the authority to nominate 12 people from different walks of life into the Parliament, and I'm one of those appointed by the Honorable President of India.
Very nice. And thank you for serving India. You are making a difference. I want to ask you a question. As you know, India is going through an election that has caught the attention of the world for its scope, for its size, for complexity. How does India manage election after election in terms of the voter registration for 900 million eligible voters and electronic voting machines? And India's democracy shines as a beacon of light as the world that is increasing and becoming dark when it comes to democracy. So it is a testament of India's democracy, and I want you to shed some light on the NRI participation as well.
All right. I think you have already explained talked about the Indian democracy. I would only like to remind you and the audience that when India became independent, at that time, a lot of people, a lot of experts had expressed their concern about whether democracy will take roots. And in fact, it was predicted that in 50 years, this country, which is divided into so many religions, castes, and creeds, is going to not hold up, and it will be balkanized, it will be broken down into pieces. And democracy cannot survive in a country like that. It has been proven wrong, and I'm very happy and proud to say that in India, democracy has taken roots. And look at the countries around India, you will find what I mean. And in India, the elections which take place normally after every 5 years, they are modern miracle. And in fact, 900 million people going to polls in very difficult terrain, and without shedding any blood, there is a change of power. This is a great success of democracy in our country. And I think that India does not get enough credit for this massive endeavor of the demonstration of democracy, at functioning democracy, that happens around the time of the general elections.
So I'm your advocate. I'm writing a column in Hindustan Times that will be published next week about India's election. I've also written, I just sent a column to Tarun that will be published in every newspaper in India, about India being a global beacon of hope for democracy around the globe. And it is a testament that the India's democracy is flourishing. It creates a common cause for all of us to be together. And India has a responsibility to become a global beacon for democracy. And that's the point that I'm making in my, and compared to what we have in the United States, in some cases, in the United States, in some of the states, we are suppressing the vote, which is not consistent with the values, character, and conscience of a nation that is the oldest democracy in the world. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about shedding some bright light on India's economy. I know you're an economist. What reforms can be
Right.
expected from a new government to create job, build prosperity, and creating a conditions and culture that allows people to prosper, to become an entrepreneur, to become innovator, and especially unleashing the potential of the younger generation who's under 30?
Yeah. Presently, India is one of the fastest growing country in the world. But that's not saying much. We are growing at the rate of roughly 7% per year in real terms. Uh, and growth, while it is higher than any large economic growth, it still falls a little bit short of India's potential growth, which is 8% per year. And if we want to raise standard of living of average India to a decent level, I think we need to grow at the rate of 8% per year for 20 years at stretch. That is going to be the challenge for the government that takes over. And it is very important at this stage to note that India is going through the fortuitous advantage of what is called demographic dividend. India has large and growing young population, and this is a great strength. But this demographic dividend can become a demographic nightmare if we do not create enough jobs for people, if we do not invest enough in education, if we do not invest enough in health. The demographic dividend can become a nightmare
And
because we will be creating more mouths to feed but not more hands to work. So exploring and harnessing this fortress demographic dividend is the biggest challenge that the ensuing government will have in the near future.
India has to also worry about the climate change. That is the biggest challenge
Right.
India faces right now. And as you can see, when I went to India, you couldn't, the air is very toxic. You cannot even breathe the air. That's affecting the GDP, that's affecting the economy, and that's also affecting the health of the people. I want to change the
Yeah.
conversation, Dr. Jadhav. You are educationist. You are the vice chancellor of a very distinguished
Right.
university, and thank you for serving that
And
university.
largest university of the country, by the way.
Pardon? What do you say, sir?
Largest university with a
A
student
largest
population of
university.
seven.
Oh my
Right. With a
goodness.
student population of 750,000.
Oh my gosh. It's a definitely one of the largest university in India. Uh,
Right.
I am.
Not one
I
of,
went to. I went to
it is
Aligarh
the,
Muslim University. I cannot
yeah.
hear you, sir. Okay.
No, I was saying it's one of the largest. It is the largest university in India.
Oh, the largest. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
correcting it. So, what reform is needed to improve the quality of education so the graduate can get jobs? And you shed some light on that and have the skill to be the parts of the 21st century workforce. As you know, India has the third largest education institution in the world, but it is not matched by
Yeah.
quality. And a lot of people, a lot of
Right.
students are leaving India to go to other part of the world. So tell me what is needed to make sure that the quality of education is improved and they have the public and private partnership, and so that we can create more job and employment in India.
Right. No, this is exactly what the demographic dividend is all about. Although we have the third largest education system in the world, as you very rightly said, there is a lot of scope for improving the quality of education at all levels. And that's a real challenge. And I'm not worried about some Indians going abroad, particularly to United States and other countries for higher education, because there are enough people in the country. But we have, while there has been some improvement, we have really a long way to go. We really need a major overhaul of the education system. In fact, one of the education policy of the national education policy is expected to be announced shortly after the new government takes over. It has been finalized, and it means a complete overhaul of the education system in our country.
Well, but also that it's not part of the conversation, as a matter of fact, for the election. And India needs to make a lot of investment in the education to create jobs and build
Oh,
prosperity, so that we can improve the quality of education. And also, a lot of education institution is owned by the politician, which also creates a conflict of interest. Would you agree with me?
uh, yeah. Uh, yes, I do. In fact, in India, although all politicians, all political parties have been making tall claims about education, fact of the matter is that India, whether it is at the central government level or at the state, that is provincial level, we have never made enough investment in education. Way back in 1966, a very important commission was appointed called Kothari
Yeah.
Commission, and they suggested that the public expenditure on education should be 6% of our GDP. I regret to say that in spite of 60 years passing, more than 60 years passing, we are still less than 4% of our GDP. So
Absolutely right.
massive in education, no doubt about it. But investment is one thing. At the same time, we need specific steps to improve the quality of education, improve the ability who are having education.
Uh, we had a little bit trouble in your because I think there is a connection problem. But I want to talk to you about, you're an author of nearly 30 books, as I understand, including several books you wrote on
No,
Mr.
excuse me,
Ambedkar. How many?
37 of fact.
37. Thank you very much for your correction.
Right,
And and you wrote a book on the Mr. Ambedkar, author of the India's Constitution, father of India's Constitution. What do you think
right.
are the legacies of Mr. Ambedkar that can inspire the next generation? As you know, he proved that there's no monopoly in wisdom. Wisdom belongs to all. He also inspired us for political and social justice. Is
Right,
that the legacy that he left behind
right.
for all of us to be inspired by him?
Indeed. In fact, I feel that while Mahatma Gandhi is the father of nation, it is Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar who is the father of India's republic. He is the one
Oh,
who awakened India's social conscience. Coming from extremely adverse background, he was born in an untouchable family and he rose to the position of writing the constitution of our country. In the constitution and generally in his vision, this is the message, this is the legacy that he had. He said that if you want to maintain democracy, not merely in form but in substance, then three conditions are required. First condition is that you have to hold on to constitutional methods of addressing all problems. All non-constitutional methods should be eschewed. This is one. Second principle, very important. He said that hero worship should not be there. And no matter what a great feeling you have about the leaders, never put your democracy at their feet. And he said that bhakti, the hero worship, may be a path to salvation in terms of religion, but in democracy, it would certainly lead to a dictatorship. And the
very well
third
said.
one, the most important, third and most important message of Dr. Ambedkar is this, that what we have achieved, he said, at the time of passing, when the Constituent Assembly was approving the Constitution on 25th November 1949, he said that what we have got is political democracy. And this political democracy must be converted into a social and economic democracy
Very well said.
for sustainability. If you keep it only to political democracy, it cannot sustain itself. In fact, I am tempted to give his full quote, but I do not know whether we have time. He said that on January 26, 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have increasingly inequality. In politics, we'll be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. How long, he said, how long can we continue to live with this contradiction? He said that we must remove this contradiction at the earliest. Those who suffer from inequality will blow up the structure of political democracy which this Constituent Assembly had so laboriously built, unquote. I think that is the essence of legacy of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar.
Very well articulated, very eloquent expression. As I understand, you went to the school in the United States in Indiana, and I live in Washington, D.C. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on the current state of the India-U.S. relationship and the contributions of India diaspora in this relationship, and how can India achieve its fullest potential? Do you think the U.S.-India relationship on a steady trajectory? And as you know, we have a shared interest and shared values. The United States and India, democracy and diversity are the two things that binds us together as an American and as an Indian. So, and as President Obama said, and I went with President Obama to India, he says it will be a defining moment of this century. So, do you think the relationship is still being defined?
Well, the Indo-US relationship has gone through many ups and downs, but I think it is now very steady. Basically, United States is the largest democracy, whereas India is the most populous democracy. We share the same set of values, and therefore we must have very strong relationship between countries. So these two ties, the ties between the two, need to be strengthened. Now, what can Indian diaspora, what role can they play in strengthening this tie-up between India and United States? Several things. You know, lots of things are happening already, but in the field of research and development, in the field of higher education, in the field of entrepreneurial development, and of course in the field of politics, there is a lot of ties has to happen. And today there are lots of days of transnational migration. There are first generation American who are having one foot in America and other foot in India. And I think this needs to be encouraged more in terms of the startups, in terms of NGOs, and in terms of think tanks, collaborative research. Also, among the companies and the business ties, the Indian diaspora can play a major role in strengthening the ties, including by their effective participation in local politics in the United States.
Very well said. So the Indian diaspora has the capability, the capacity, and the responsibility to help India achieve its fullest potential, not only in healthcare or climate, also providing seed money, innovations, entrepreneurship, creating a job, and also in education. I think you said it very well. And I hope you can come to the United States to tell our India diaspora what they need to do. And they're very strong, and they're vibrant, they're resilient, they do a good job, and I'm very proud of them. I am one of the Indian diaspora who take a lot of pride in our heritage. So thank you very much.
For the time being.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jadhav, and thank you very much for watching the show. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week.